What's going on, everybody? It's Thomas Wooden Railway here, and I am back with another custom Thomas Wooden Railway model video. Today we're looking at not one, not two, but three custom models that were made by my good friend HiroTheJapaneseTrain. And if you have seen either the Great Race Thomas and Friends special or the Journey Beyond Sodor special, you know exactly who these characters are. These are the Mainland Diesel Shunters, as I'm going to call them. I'm sure you can call them a number of different things, but I had HiroTheJapaneseTrain make me some customs of these diesels that appeared in the background of the Great Race, and then they also got some pretty good screen time in Journey Beyond Sodor, and I immediately just felt like these characters were really cool, and I would love to have them in Wooden Railway form. So here we are. Big thanks to HiroTheJapaneseTrain for making these for me, and there's a bit of a funny story that goes along with the making of these customs. So I suppose we can get started with just a brief history of these guys. Like I've said, they've only appeared in two Thomas and Friends specials so far. In the Great Race, where the climax of the movie takes place in this giant shunting yard on the mainland, you see these three what I would call, generic diesel shunters running around in the background, and basically their purpose is to prepare all of the trains or help kind of prepare the events for the other engines during the actual Great Railway show. But what was really unique about these diesels is that, for one, they were very brightly colored, so you could see them coming from a mile away. But two, there was kind of a mysterious element about them because during the Great Race, they didn't have any close-up shots, they never spoke to anybody, they were just kind of running around in the background. So for me personally, there was this desire to kind of know, who are these guys, what are their names, what are they doing here at the Great Railway show besides just shunting these trains. There was kind of that longing to know more about these characters because I thought they were just super intriguing right from the get-go. So in the Great Race, they appeared, rather frequently in the background. They definitely added to the realism of the movie because, there's a shot of, Thomas talking to Ashima, and all of a sudden you see this diesel moving in the background, and he's pulling this train somewhere, he's setting up for another event. And so to me, that was just a nice sign of realism that was like, you know what? The fact that these diesels are actually doing work in the background, they're just not sitting around doing nothing, just kind of adds to the realism if, the Great Railway show was an actual event and the engines were actually real. So they were just in the background in the Great Race. You didn't hear them talk or anything like that. And so when I elected to have HiroTheJapaneseTrain make these customs for me about 8 or 9 months ago, that was their only appearance to date. I didn't even think about them appearing in Journey Beyond Sodor. Personally, I just thought they were, a Great Railway show thing, and that was it. So HiroTheJapaneseTrain was actually making these customs for me when Journey Beyond Sodor came out. And I was pleasantly surprised to see them once again, all of a sudden in that one scene where James is in Bridlington goods yard. He's searching for Thomas, and he runs into at least, three of the diesels. I think the Thomas wiki right now has says that there's like 4 of them possibly. But anyway, he basically runs into the same diesels from the Great Railway show. And what's cool about this is that, one, it was totally unexpected. Nobody saw it coming. As sort of a minor fan of these characters already, I was completely taken aback, and I was just in awe at this scene. I was like, man, I can't believe we get to see these guys again. But the best part is that, for one, we got some close-up shots of them, and two, a couple of them actually spoke some lines. And this is where we learned out that one of the diesel's names is actually Ulli or Ulli, or basically some variation of that. It's kind of a weird name, but I'd say, based on how these custom diesels look, I'd say the one in the middle here is probably Ulli, in my opinion, just because he happens to look like the diesel named Ulli just by coincidence. So like I mentioned earlier, there was a funny story about these diesels, and the funny story is that I commissioned HiroTheJapaneseTrain to make these customs for me, only believing and knowing that they had appeared in the Great Race. So it was kind of funny that all of a sudden I'm watching Journey Beyond Sodor for the first time and they pop up. So it was great. We got to learn some new information about them. We got to see, more of a personal side to them. And overall, it was just a really great experience. But for HiroTheJapaneseTrain, that was key, because in the Great Race, we just got to see, them from far away and got to see them in some grainy screenshots. And I mean, we didn't really get a a good long look at the diesels, but that's exactly the opposite of what happened in Journey Beyond Sodor. So he was in the process of making the customs when the movie came out. It was just a coincidence that I'd already asked him to make them for me. And so I believe he actually took some inspiration from a couple of the faces he saw, and that's where we get the designs of the faces that we see on the customs here. So enough about the actual, history behind these diesel shunters. I guess I'll just start off on the left here. And since only one of these diesels has a name at this point, which is that center one, Ulli, whatever you want to call him, I don't really know what to name this guy. Obviously, some people are going to suggest in the comments, you should name him this, you should name him that, but really, this is kind of the grumpy Great Railway Show diesel shunter. In my opinion, this is the diesel in Journey Beyond Sodor that actually calls to Ulli. He's like, hey, Ulli, you ever seen a blue tank engine come through here? So right now we don't know what his name is. He looks a little bit grumpier than he did in that scene, but at the same time, you could kind of tell he's a bit of a more annoyed diesel. So obviously, I'm a big fan of all of the customs that everybody's made me so far in this series, and that I'm going to show off later. But there is just something about this custom here that just blows me away. For one, here the Japanese train got the paint scheme exactly right. He got the colors right. He came along with a fine tip permanent marker, I'm guessing, probably a Sharpie, and manually added in the details that you see there, which is just incredible. I mean, these details are so small that you couldn't get away with painting it like you see up here. So, I mean, the I guess, attention to detail and the amount of patience that here the Japanese train had to have had while making this custom is far more than I ever had, without a doubt. So if you haven't guessed it, this diesel is based off of a Thomas Wooden Railway diesel model, specifically the 2013 CGI version. What's really great is he actually, here the Japanese train made him look angry. And I think what he ended up doing is he filed down the mouth area a little bit. Obviously, he took off the smile part, and then he just came along with a permanent marker and just kind of forced a frown in there. I mean, I guess that's the best way I can explain that. He also redid the eyebrows, and overall it turns a happy CGI diesel model into sort of an angry or annoyed diesel shunter from the Great Railway Show. The painted wheels on the side here are just, a nice touch, and I think underneath here you can briefly see, if it's going to focus, you can see right there it was a diesel model. For some reason, I ended up with a couple of those, and I don't use the CGI model of diesel in my series, so I had this laying around, and since it's the same basis, it's kind of funny that throughout Thomas and Friends history, they've used this same diesel basis for a lot of different engines, like Diesel, Arian Burt, Splatter and Dodge, Paxton, Sydney, just to name a few, and then we get these three generic background characters, and lo and behold, they're the same bases. So that worked out kind of well. But I am absolutely in love with this custom. I think it looks so good. He added the buffers and kind of the coupling area. And just looking at, these finer details and seeing that it was all hand-drawn, I mean, just the attention to detail is simply incredible. So that is what I call our angry or annoyed diesel shunter. Let's move on to, I guess his name is Ulli. Basically, he's kind of, before he had a name, I considered him the happy-go-lucky diesel shunter, or just the happy diesel shunter. This diesel shunter was made from a Paxton model. For fans of my channel who have been watching my content for a really long time, in one of my unboxing videos, I think from 2016, I unboxed an Arsdale Wacky Track bridge, and it came with a diesel model, or excuse me, it came with a Paxton model, and I wasn't planning on using that Paxton in my series because it didn't come with the painted wheels. And then a few days after that unboxing video, I forgot what I was doing, but I ended up dropping that Paxton model. And it either hit a piece of track or hit off of something, and either right here or right here is where it hit the ground or the object. I think right there, you can kind of see it. And a big chip came out of him. And you guys know how particular I am about my engines and my models. And so right then and there, I was like, well, you know what? I guess I'm not, any chance of me ever using that Paxton model went out the window right there because he had this big chip in the side of him. So I kept that model for a while. I thought maybe taking the face off of it or anything like that. But then when it when it came time to make these customs, I was like, you know what? I have a Paxton model, and conveniently, one of the Great Railway Show diesel shunters actually looks like Paxton. So I sent this to HiroTheJapaneseTrain, and he made some changes to the face. One of them was first of all, he kind of lengthened and expanded the eyebrows, and then he gave him some freckles on the side here. And it's amazing what a small change like that does to the overall complexion and just the character of this diesel. So it has the same details that you saw in the last one. Just even adding in, the tail lamp here is just a phenomenal addition. Thank you so much, HiroTheJapaneseTrain. These look so awesome. I mean, I could literally stare at these for days. So here is Ulli, whatever you want to call him. He used to be Paxton, but now he's actually has a name. And really, he's just kind of the happy-go-lucky diesel shunter, in my opinion. So there's our second diesel shunter. Turned out just as good or even better than the one you just looked at. And here is our third one. And I thought, at the time, remember when I commissioned these customs, they had only appeared in the Great Race. And I thought, if I'm going to get, I'm going to get custom engines of these done, I want to get all three, because at the time there were just three. I guess there's technically four now. But I was like, one of these customs would be nice. But let's just do the whole batch while we're at it. So here is our third one. As you can probably tell, it's another CGI diesel model from 2013 by Mattel. HiroTheJapaneseTrain, he redid the eyebrows right there, and then he kind of added a little bit of facial hair, a little bit of scruffy part that's very similar to Aryan Bird, for sure. So again, the same details, just really nice quality overall. Yeah, it just looks incredible. I mean, the red wheels are just a nice touch. Yeah, it used to be diesel. Don't really have much else to say about this. I mean, because, they're all identical, but at the same time, that was my worst fear, is that I didn't want them to be 100% identical. I wanted them to have, something different about them. So that's where the faces came into play there. Speaking of faces, what ended up happening to get the classic diesel striping around the face here, I believe what HiroTheJapaneseTrain did was he took the faces off, and then he came in with a permanent marker and made it look super nice, and then he put the face back on. And that was key, because he could have left the face on, but then you would run up right to the edge of the face and you might get some marker on the face, and that's no good. So thanks to him for taking the extra time to do that. That was probably a pain to do, but it ended up working out. And I'm not really sure, I called the other one Happy Diesel. This is kind of a Happy Diesel shunter as well. It'll be interesting to see, though, in the future, if these guys ever appear again, if they receive names, if more of them talk. Who knows, there could be like a whole fleet out there with these diesel shunters. They're so brightly painted, though. I mean, it's like looking into the sun, but it's just a really nice color scheme for sure. And here the JapaneseTrain definitely nailed that. The only problem with this model, in my opinion, it was not HiroTheJapaneseTrain's fault. It's that you can kind of see there, he's a little lopsided. I don't know if or how I'll fix that, but you only really notice it when he's like sitting like, face on or head on to the camera. So those are our three diesel shunters that appeared first off in the Great Race from 2016, and then they made kind of an unexpected appearance in Journey Beyond Sodor in 2017. So with Big World, Big Adventures coming up later this year, who knows? Like, will they go for 3 for 3, or have we seen enough or all of these diesel shunters so far? Personally, I think I'd love to see them again, but I think part of what makes them appealing to me is that there's a sense of mystery about them. We don't know a whole lot about them. I think names are fine. The names have to fit, obviously. But really, that's all I personally want to know. I don't want to get like an episode based around these guys. They're just great background characters who, You know, they're not in the spotlight, and I don't think they're ever really going to be in the spotlight. They're not really intended for that. But man, if you couldn't tell, I'm a big fan of these customs. I want to thank HiroTheJapaneseTrain again so much for working so hard and putting in, I don't know, countless hours of work on these guys with the fine detailing, everything. They turned out awesome. So be sure to check out his channel. I have a link in the description and in the comments below. As for these diesel shunters right here, I don't really know what else to say other than they look fantastic, and I love kind of the unique face that each of them have. So I think that does it for this custom Thomas Wooden Railway model video. Of course, I'd love to hear your guys' thoughts and comments, so be sure to leave those below. And other than that, I'll have another custom video coming up in a few days, but until then, thanks for watching everyone, and I'll see you soon.